so for Obama, the calculation is, yeah, Vice President would be great. Because if the Democratic ticket loses this year, well, the blame is on Clinton. And her moment has passed, and his is just coming along. If they win, okay, then he's Vice President. He'll be Vice President. He'll be on the ticket again in 2012. And again, win or lose in 2012, he's the heir apparent. It's a little bit more problematic for Hillary Clinton. I have a hunch that this is Hillary Clinton's best shot at things. Because one of the problems that she's encountering is what various people are describing as the Clinton fatigue factor. It seems like we've had the Clintons around forever. And here she suffers from her connection to Bill Clinton. I mean, she benefited from it because that's how she got her name into national politics. But, you know, we've seen Clintons around for a long time, and if she doesn't get it this time around, I think her star is fading. And it might not have fallen just far enough. She might still get the nomination. It's going to be a very close call. But if she doesn't get it now, it's just going to continue to fade. For McCain, this is definitely his best and almost certainly his last shot. He is going to suffer from the age factor in the general campaign. And Republicans play patty cake when they're in their primary process. Republicans, most of them still adhere to Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, and that is to say no evil of another Republican. And, you know, people haven't been pressing McCain on that. You have to be careful pressing it because there are a lot of voters out there who are as old as John McCain, and they don't want to be told that they're over the hill. So what you do is you arrange for photo ops. Well, this is what John Kennedy did implicitly against Dwight Eisenhower in 1960. I have to say implicitly because he wasn't running against Eisenhower. He was running against Richard Nixon. But the comparison was a new generation against the old generation. And despite the fact, and this is one of those ironies of history, despite the fact that John Kennedy in 1960 was probably in worse health than Dwight Eisenhower was. It's just we didn't know all of his health problems. But it was Kennedy who was arranging all of those touch football games at Hyannisport and all the vigorous physical activity. He didn't have to say, I'm this new generation. Oh, but he did. I can still remember the voice of Kennedy pronounced the word Viga. And Viga, this was going to be an important aspect of this new administration. And you can bet that if Obama gets the nomination, then there are going to be all sorts of ways that the Democrats will be thinking, okay, how can we put Barack Obama out there, I don't know, on the skis. You have to be careful here. John Kerry realized windsurfing, no good. In the days of Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, who was Roosevelt's anointed successor, Taft liked to play golf. And Roosevelt said, no, golf, no good. Golf was too patrician a sport back in those days. So he told Taft to stay off the golf course. So you have to choose things. I don't know what the appropriate physical activity for Obama would be. But could be, oh, that's right, he plays basketball, right? That'd be perfect. Oh my, yeah, that really would be good. And so, yeah, this is one of those cases where McCain can realize this is it. If he wins now, he wins. But if he doesn't, he doesn't. Somebody, now, Gleaves, you might know this, and some others you might remember. But I have this vague recollection when Ronald Reagan was running for president in 1980, and his age became an issue. But I don't remember if Reagan himself or somebody associated with the campaign, and maybe I'm just dreaming this, but I have this recollection that somebody suggested, well, you think age is an issue, Reagan will probably be just a one-term president. Does that ring a bell with anybody else, or am I just hallucinating this? Okay, I mean, you have to be very careful. You don't want to make any commitment. But, I mean, given what we know about Reagan's health in his second term, and the fact that he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's not long after leaving the presidency, it's really clear that health should be an issue. It shouldn't be a disqualifier. There are vigorous people who are in their 90s. There's a retired Texas Supreme Court judge, whom I got to know in Texas, who I see walking around the lake in Austin. And I guess he's 93, and he's just as spry as can be. And so it's not a disqualifier, but it's an issue. But of course, the Democrats are going to have to be very careful how they raise that, just as the Republicans, well, they are going to be tempted to play on the fact that there are probably still some voters who would hesitate to vote for a woman, And there are probably some voters who, for one reason or another, would hesitate to vote for an African American. So how do you deal with those? These days with the internet, one way to do it is you just have somebody slip something out on the blog and Matt Drudge picks it up, and it can be as scurrilous as you want it to be. One last comment on this is it is often commented that politics today, presidential politics today, is dirtier and lower than it used to be. No, not at all. If you go back to politics in the 1820s, for heaven's sakes, it was far nastier than politics today. I won't say that people were nastier in those days, but because there were no pocket video cams and telephones with cameras on it, and there are no tape recorders, people knew they could get away with saying all sorts of stuff to a particular audience, and they just not deny that they ever said it. They could put out propaganda that could never be traced back to its source. The politicking was so big in the campaign of 1828 that Rachel Jackson, Andrew Jackson's wife, suffered a nervous breakdown as a result of all the nasty things that were said about Rachel Jackson. In fact, she suffered not only a nervous breakdown, she suffered a physical breakdown. She died under the strain of this just after Jackson was elected and before Jackson could be inaugurated. And Andrew Jackson was so distraught at the loss of his wife of 35 years that he almost didn't go to Washington. He almost didn't go to be inaugurated. In fact, he threw himself down on the ground beside her grave in January rain. And he had to be sort of picked up by his friends and sort of cleaned off. And the only way he could be talked into going to Washington was by playing on his belief that his political enemy had killed Rachel. And he wasn't going to let them have the last word. He was going to go to Washington to deal with them. Thanks very much. There's time to end? Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, this was vintage Bill Brands. Those of you who've been to his lectures before know this, that you get him wound up, and by about
He doesn't know when to stop.
the 20-minute mark, I tell you, he's really on a roll. So hope that you'll be able to join us for the remaining 5 lectures between now and Wednesday night. We have information on the table out here, and also you can always go to allpresidents.org to get as much information about these lectures as possible. Especially want to remind you about tonight, 7:30 Ford Auditorium. That's where Bill will be giving his next talk. Thank you so much.